Hi there, welcome. I'm Bob Thompson, and I'd like to welcome you to the Philanthropic Planners Program. We've been putting the Philanthropic Planner Program on for, I think this is about 83 years now. And the reason for it is we like to share with you the world of philanthropy, the exciting, boring subject of philanthropy. But we'd like to welcome you and let you know about philanthropic planning. We know that you don't have to be a multimillionaire to be a philanthropist, and we like to kind of have a meaningful dialogue in the community about the importance of philanthropy to the community, to the state, region, country, and globally. But we want to simplify the complexity of philanthropy, share with you what a lot of your neighbors are doing and what people across the country are doing in the world of philanthropy, and talk about social capital, voluntary tax versus involuntary tax. All that means is that we can gift and get a tax deduction and redirect where your what would have been tax dollars to something that you think is an important cause, kind of eliminating the middleman, if you will. But we talk about things like capacity. Capacity is, I hear a lot in my business, people will say, Bob, I'd like to do more if I knew how. I'd like to do more if I could. Well, if I could means, do I have the capacity to give during my life or at death? And if I knew how, that's the part of the reason for this program. To share with you as philanthropists, you and me, and to share with other philanthropic planners who I know because they get back to me to see if I'm telling the truth, Bob. But anyway, let's get on with it because we've got a lot to talk about today, but welcome. Our program today is really based on the cover of the Chronicle of Philanthropy this month. And you'll see a young person with some kind of phone and a 2B. That's 2 billion. And we've got some young people that certainly have the capacity to give. And we hear stories of young people out on the tech world, 30, 35, even some 25-year-olds that are billionaires now after their company has an IPO and comes out, and suddenly this nerd genius becomes a billionaire. So they have the capacity, but when we talk about capacity, what do we really mean? If we look at the definition of the noun capacity, it's the maximum amount that something can contain, fully occupying available area or space, the capacity of that space. A modifier is, the stadium had a capacity crowd, the amount that something can produce. The company in the electrical area was doubling their capacity, something that they could produce and the amount there. Secondly, the ability or power to do something or to understand something. I was impressed by her capacity for hard work, understanding that capacity, a person's legal competence, cases where they have the capacity to do something. And thirdly, a specified role or position. I'm in the role of a donor, a volunteer. My position is my capacity. So when we talk about capacity, our program today is the challenges of capacity and consider the possibilities. Now, when we talk about young people, or we talk about ultra wealth, we think of young and ultra wealth. Mark Zuckerberg, we've talked about in the past, and some of the gifting that he's done, and his partner at Facebook, I believe, Sean Parker, and here are two young people that have gifted a lot of money in a short period of time, certainly age-wise, but they have the capacity and they recognize the challenges to their wealth and giving back to the community, making it a better world. And that's what philanthropy is all about. But, we did a program a while back about do the math and how big is your calculator. And we talked about just how much wealth is out there in this country and the world. And what part of that wealth ends up in the philanthropic arena. And how since 2007, 8, and 9, we've tried to get back to the level of giving and philanthropy since that time. And we're up to about $350 billion in annual giving. I think this year will be a little bit more than that. We'll see. The market's been rather flat. But when we look at the stock market, for example, and we're saying that just the stock market alone capitalization is about $20 trillion. And we get up and down the roller coaster yo-yo market, and the market went down quite a bit last week, one day, and up comes Bloomberg saying stockholders lost 80 billion. Well, in the scheme of things, on a daily basis, that really isn't a lot of money if you're talking about $20 trillion. But let's get back to these young people and Zuckerberg and Parker and so on. You had Mark 5 years ago, $100 million that he gave to the city of Newark, New Jersey for their school system. He teamed up with the mayor of Newark and said there's an incredible need there. And Mark suddenly gets out his pen and transfers $100 million, not all at one time, but certainly making that commitment to the Newark school system. And then last year, again, Mark Zuckerberg, another $120 million to the San Francisco Bay Area schools to improve education, to help needy kids and so on. But here's a commitment to education from Zuckerberg. And then February of this year, Mark and his wife gifted another $75 million to San Francisco General Hospital. So in a short period of time, here's a young man that's got the capacity, has accepted the challenges, and has gifted a lot of money. Sean Parker, another young man at 32, gifted $24 million to research at Stanford University, and turns around just recently and sets up $550 million in his foundation in his name, and to a donor advised fund, the combination of $550 million. A lot of capacity, but accepting the challenges of having this wealth and recognizing out here that he can do more to make the world a better place. We've always, for the last, I don't know how many years, we've been hearing about Bill and Melinda Gates and their foundation, and then shortly after that, Warren Buffett making a commitment to gift to the Gates Foundation. And right now the Gates Foundation is like 45 billion, a combination of Gates and Buffett. And when Warren passes, the rest of his estate will go to the Gates Foundation and so on. We hear about this ultra wealth. And just this last week, a Saudi Arabian prince, Al-Walid, I believe is the prince's name, and he has made a commitment of gifting $34 billion of his wealth to philanthropy. And again, looking at the need, recognizing the need and the challenges, and contributing in that to philanthropy. So when we recognize the ultra wealth, and we recognize that they do have the capacity, and we say, oh, but Bob, do I have the capacity? I would like to do more, Bob, if I could. And that all relates back to, do I have the capacity to give? And what that is, we need to monitor and on a quarter to quarter, year to year basis, and review, do I have the capacity to do more during my life? And that's what these young people are doing. They're saying, you know, if Bill Gates 30 years ago had recognized of giving more, think of what he could have done. Well, that's kind of tongue in cheek, but what they're really saying is their own age, at a young age, that they can gift and they can see and direct and really have the benefit of seeing the good that they're doing. You know, our title is The Challenges of Capacity and Consider the Possibilities. Well, think about challenges in another respect. Just this last week, a few days ago, as a matter of fact, the Phil Knight Cancer Institute at the Oregon Health and Science University out in Oregon. Recently, Phil Knight, at a gala fundraising, made a challenge and surprised everybody in attendance there that he committed to gift $500 million to the Oregon Health and Sciences University if it were matched. In other words, he's making the challenge that he will gift $500 million if another $500 million is raised. But he said if it's $499 million, then his pledge is nil. Okay? Well, a part of his challenge and a part of his pledge was that this had to be done in 2 years. Well, last week, 22 months after that challenge, after that pledge, they were successful in hitting $1 billion. His 500 match, 500 million, and 500 million raised. Well, the state of Oregon, 6 months after that, passed legislation to commit 200 million. And then about 6 months after that, Gert Boyle, a lady, came into the office and said she was going to gift 100 million toward this 500 million raise. So cancer research, and they raised from over 10,000 donors, over 10,000 in all 50 states and DC and 5 or 6 foreign countries. They were successful in raising that 500 million to be matched by Phil Knight. Challenges. Now, in the world of philanthropy, challenges aren't new. It's not something new. If we look at history, Ben Franklin, the story is that Ben Franklin in 1750 saw the need to start a hospital in Philadelphia. And there was a lack, a very slow pace commitment and subscribers in funding the money to create this new hospital in Philadelphia. And out of the air, Franklin comes up and says, I will match 2,000 pounds, English pounds. I will match 2,000. And he says, later, I had no idea why I came up with 2,000, but out of the air. And in 18 days, another 2,000 pounds was raised, and he matched that. So the challenge there was kind of resonated with a lot of people and said, wow, we don't want to lose his 2,000 challenge. And in Phil Knight's situation with the cancer research out in Oregon, people didn't want to lose this commitment of $500 million. And when we look at the challenges of capacity, it's one of locally. If we have someone of means that says, I will gift $10,000 to Simsbury Community TV, and do it in the form of a challenge, we don't want to lose that $10,000. The state of Connecticut recently did something similar, where we don't want to lose the federal monies for XYZ project. So the means, the challenges of coming up with that and recognizing that, it gives somebody something to talk about. I can go out and talk to a potential donor and say, we've got a challenge here. Universities have been doing this for years and saying, we've got a $10 million match. I remember way back in the dark ages, we got an anonymous challenge. Well, we knew that John Paul Getty was the only one back then that could come up with that kind of money. And Getty says, if you raise X dollars, I'll match it. Well, we had a story. We could go out and talk about the challenges there. And it has gravity. It resonates, as I mentioned to you before. Well, when we look at matching and capacity, the challenges there, when I mentioned a previous show and we talked about the numbers, do the math, how big's your calculator? And we talk about Phil Knight's situation. Think about it, 10,000 donors when they heard about the challenge and heard about the match possibilities, 10,000 in all 50 states. Now, why would a donor in Connecticut or New Jersey or New Hampshire donate to a cancer research in Oregon? It's because people, colleagues, peers, friends, neighbors, family said, wow, have you heard about this? Well, we're all touched by cancer. Every one of us knows people that have cancer in the family or friends or neighbors or whatever. And because of this challenge, because of this Phil Knight challenge, they donated to this cancer research. Well, when we look at that, we say, what else can we do in that sense? What kind of challenges can we have? And do we recognize our capacity? Can I come back? Well, there have been surveys out there, the Bank of America, when you look at some of the surveys by Schwab and some of these others, they say, people would give, and when asked why they haven't given in the past, two reasons. One, I didn't know how to give. And the second reason was nobody asked me. Nobody asked me. So when we look at churches and we look at some of their senior citizens and we find out in asking and surveys and so on, have you included the church, the synagogue or what have you, in your will for a testamentary bequest? No. Well, what are the reasons? Well, I didn't know how, and nobody asked me. So I'm asking you now to think about the challenges of capacity and consider the possibilities that we have locally for charities that need your help and need your support because they're under incredible pressure. Today, the demand is greater. Funding is being taken away either from tax funding or what have you. So the demand continues to be there and grow, but they need your help. All the time I talk about newspaper, local events, rides, races, fundraising, and so on. And I saw recently in the Hartford Courant an article about a gentleman who was celebrating just recently Father's Day. And it wasn't that long ago that this gentleman had gone through 10 heart-related surgeries, needed a heart transplant, and just not that long ago received a heart transplant. And on this Father's Day was special because he could appreciate his children and grandchildren and celebrated, and that's what this article in the Farmington Valley section of the Courant. Well, I have a story also about a similar thing on on a donor transplant, and I'd like to share with you a story, a fraternity brother, a gentleman out in Ohio, and a similar story to this Father's Day, a story on a donor organ transplant. I hope you like it and get the message as much as I did.
So this is going to be our 53rd year together. We've had 3 wonderful children. Lynn and I are best friends and always have been. I've never really had any significant problems. The liver crept up on us, and unfortunately, livers don't go bad overnight. They go bad over many, many years. And as I went downhill, I was going pretty fast, getting worse by the week and by the month.
He couldn't get up by himself. He was to the point where he needed a walker. It was just getting really scary.
I first met him in the ICU. He was really sick and he was comatose. He was completely comatose. We gave him all medical treatment we could, but nothing worked.
So it just became a nightmare at that point.
We put him through a process of liver transplant listing, and he got listed for transplant, but we have more individuals in need for liver transplant than we have organs available.
It became pretty clear through Dr. Zane that I was not going to get a transplant from a cadaver. I was never going to get to the top of the list, and as he said, by the time you get to the top of the list, you're going to be nearly dead.
The Cleveland Clinic is one of the centers and in fact one of the pioneers in live donor liver transplant.
The hepatologists, the surgeons, the nurses, a great team of interactive parts, of people that really work together well to make each other better. The concept behind living liver donation is very simple.
We take the small portion of the liver from the donor and we remove the recipient diseased liver completely out of the body and transplant small donor liver to the recipient.
That liver will regenerate. You've taken one liver and used it for 2 people.
First of all, you look at your own children, but none of them had the same blood type that Doug has.
As time went on, actually they had their own discussions with their family and friends until eventually a donor was identified.
Ted Engel was my donor, and he is the son-in-law of my oldest and best friend in the world.
I mentally was prepared, was looking forward to getting through the test to have this opportunity to eventually save someone.
I had a peace the day of that surgery that I can't describe to you.
When we go to the OR for a living donor, each one of those patients has 2 surgeons, so that the surgery of the 2, which are done simultaneously, can be perfectly choreographed and organized.
10 hours into surgery for Ted, they let Kelly know that Ted was finished. But then we had another couple more hours to wait before we actually saw Dr. Hashimoto again. And he came out to let us know that the surgery was done. Everything went great. He was giving us this, and then of course we all gave him a high five.
One day he came back to the clinic to see me, and he said, how many living donor transplant we do here? So I said, maybe 10 to 20 a year. But he said, why don't you do more?
We wanted to see other people experience what I've experienced. I mean, I've been reborn in essence.
And I think philanthropic gift targeted toward improving the public knowledge of live donor transplantation will certainly serve the purpose of saving many more lives.
And the recognition and the funding that the chair provides is godsend.
I consider myself a person at the right place at the right time. They got to make a difference in someone's life, and it actually made a huge difference in my life as well.
And I'll be forever grateful to, obviously, Ted and his wife and kids for sustaining my life. The way I feel today, I expect it to be a very, very long life and very productive and very healthy life.
Well, you're Superman now, right?
Well, I'm not quite Superman, but I feel like I am.
I hope you enjoyed that. It's kind of a personal thing for me, but when I saw this and I was relating it to the story of the Father's Day locally, I thought maybe I'd incorporate that and ask Karen if she could put that into our program. She said yes. What did we see in that, or what did I see? Cleveland Clinic has the capacity to have those kind of surgeries. Ted Engel, the donor, the organ transplant of a liver transplant. By the way, in a short period of time, both the donor and the recipient, their livers had grown up to 100%. So Ted Engel recognized the challenge and stepped forward and was an organ donor. Doug and Linda Cowan had the capacity, and they appreciated what the Cleveland Clinic did, and they had the capacity to make a major gift to the Cleveland Clinic. And when Doug said, I want to have Cleveland Clinic do more of these surgeries, that to me is an answer to some of the challenges of capacity. Thanks. See you next time. Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.